Hi there, I'm Jamie. Welcome to my new post-production tutorial of a daylight exterior scene. This is a bonus tutorial for my Patreon supporters. The Photoshop files and the render elements are free for my Patreon supporters and those who have the previous rendering tutorial of this scene. Throughout this tutorial, you will learn some of the best post-production techniques used in visualization and film industry. I'm really excited to take you through this amazing process. For more free tutorials and 3D models with textures, please visit my Patreon page to become a supporter. Also, please visit my blog, Facebook page and my YouTube channel, or simply email me on jamiecardo@hotmail.com. Hi there, welcome to the post-production part of the exterior render. After having rendered and saved out all the pre-render elements from the exterior shot, we're just going to come into Photoshop and bring in all the pre-render elements. So just go to File, Scripts, and choose Load Files into Stack. In the Load Layers dialog, so just go to Browse, select the first pre-render element there, scroll down, hold on the Shift key, and select the last one. So the entire set of files are selected. So you just click OK, so they all loaded up in the Load Layers dialog. Click OK, so they should just start loading up automatically. So now that all the pre-render elements have been loaded up, we're going to turn off the visibility of all the other render elements and organize them. Apart from the RGB, hold down the Alt key and select on the eye icon there. Move the RGB to the bottom of the part. Change its base color to red just by right clicking on it. So we're going to organize all these floating pre-render elements. You click the first one, scroll up, hold down the Shift key and select the last one there. Click on the group button there. So all those layers now are inside this particular group. If you don't have the latest version of Photoshop, simply select the entire set of layers and drag them inside the group folder. Let's rename that group as Render Elements. Next we're going to create a new group and we're going to call it Adjustments. The reason why I'm using the equal in front of the name of each folder is because later on, after you've had that many adjustment layers and group, it'll be easier to pick and choose from the document after you right click on it. Click on your adjustments button and choose the curves adjustment layer to start adding a little bit of contrast to the overall image. So I normally just add 2 points. First one on top there, that area there represents the brighter areas of the image, and this area here represents the darker areas of an image. So I'm just going to start tweaking these down like so. You already made a huge difference just by adding a little bit of contrast there. So next thing that we're going to do, we're going to create a new folder. We're going to call it Light Select. So this is the folder where the light selection will go. So we're just going to go inside a folder group and select the V-Ray Sun render element, which is this one. So this is the V-Ray Sun Light Select. So we're just going to move it into that Light Select folder there, just to organize things. The Light Select render element works best with screen blending mode, just like most V-Ray render elements. So you're just going to reduce its intensity slightly. So let's reduce it to about 50%. So you can see how much of a difference that makes. It's amazing. And we can also change the color of the light just by adding another adjustment layer there, the levels. To link the adjustment layer to the Light Select element, simply hold down the Control key and clip it. To change the color of the light, simply go to the RGB, choose the red color, and just change the color of the sunlight. But for the purpose of this tutorial, we're not doing it. This color is fine as it is. So the next thing that we're going to do is to link the glass with the skies. Normally in real photos you always see the sky color being reflected on the glass. So that area there is slightly blue, this area not so much, and that area almost none. So we're going to select the glass. Before we select, we're just going to make sure that all these multi-matte elements are at the top. Because when it comes to selection, you want the multi-matte and the V-Ray wire color elements to be on top. It's easy to select. Select the multi-matte _6. We're going to open the channels tab there, hold down the control key and select the blue channel. So the blue represents the glass areas. While the selection is on, we're going to create a new folder, group, add the mask on it by clicking on its button. So whatever changes we make inside that group will be restricted to that mask. So let's rename that group as class 1. So in here, the first thing that we're going to do now is to add the photo filter adjustment layer. I normally, for the glass, just go to cooling filter, so it's a nice color there. So, and this area here looks okay, but on that area not so much. So what we can do, click on that mask thumbnail there, select the brush tool, or click on the B button from your keyboard. The mask works with the black and white colors. You can switch between the two colors. With the X key on your keyboard, the black color takes away pixels and the white color does the opposite. You can control the opacity of your brush with that, and the softness, I normally go to no hardness at all, so it's very soft. You can control the size of the brush here or with your keyboard. In this particular case, I'm just going to click on the X button to change the color to black here. So I'm going to brush away some of the blue pixels with the brush tool while the mask thumbnail is selected. Every stroke with the brush is actually seen in a mask thumbnail. Also, we want to add more reflection to this area here as opposed to that. So what we're going to do, we're going to hold down the control key and select on the glass. The glass selection is now enabled. We go into the selection tool, hold down the Alt key, see the minus there, so we're deselecting the areas that you don't want to be selected, so it's only that. And we're going to add a subfolder there and create a new layer mask while the selection was on. Let's rename this new subfolder as reflection. So for that subfolder, we're going to find the raw render element. So we're going to select and move that render element closer to the other group folders, so we don't have to constantly have to scroll up and down. So that we're going to hold down the Alt key to copy it. So we're going to copy it there inside. The raw reflection works best with a normal blending mode. So there, you can control the amount of reflections on a glass with the opacity values. So it just makes it a lot more interesting to look at, really. Next, we're going to even the brightness of that area of the facade. So you can bring that brightness slightly down. So we're going to select that area there first, going all the way up to find the selection for that area first. There you go. So it's the multi-element _10. We open the channels tab again, hold down the control key and select the blue channel there. While the selection is on, turn off the layer visibility. See, that selection is not affecting this other part here. So we're going to click on the lasso tool, hold down the shift key, see the plus. We can begin adding to extend the selection and close it. So while the selection is still on, we're just going to come down here, create a new folder and add a mask. Again, that mask is just going to affect that facade area. So we're going to name it Facade. So for the facade, because we want to bring up the color because it's a bit washed out, we're going to add the diffuse filter render element. Again, we're going to move this render element closer to the other group folders. To copy the render element, we're going to hold down the Alt key and move it inside the Facade group folder. Make it visible. The diffuse filter works best with a normal blending mode. Let's reduce the opacity of this render element slightly to help blend the layer more seamlessly. To make the area less flat, we're going to use a richer render element. The richer render elements need to be very subtle when added to the building. The building needs to look pristine, but more realistic with these extra details. Let's start by selecting those two render elements, the rich building and the streaks one there. Hold down the Alt key and copy there. The richer render elements work best with a multiply blending mode. And we're going to add a layer mask on both of them. Turn off that one. We're going to start with this one here, the streaks. To make it more subtle, we're going to reduce the opacity values. While the layer mask is selected, enable the brush tool and reduce its size slightly. Let's mask out that line there slightly with the brush. Let's tweak and mask out the richer on other areas of the building using some of the techniques mentioned earlier. So next we're going to use the rich building there. So you want to get rid of that line there. Let's use the same techniques as before. Again, we're going to reduce the opacity slightly. Again, we're doing the same thing. We're going there with the brush. You can see the before and after. There's clearly a lot more detail there. Let's reduce the opacity of the layer slightly. And also, we can add the levels adjustment layer there. The adjustment layer was purposely placed under the richer elements so it doesn't affect them when tweaking the contrast with the levels. Let's adjust the diffuse filter layer a bit further and the levels. Let's make richer a bit more prominent on the edge of that facade with the layer mask and the brush tool. So the next thing that we're going to do is to add some more reflections onto the roof there. So we're going to start by enabling the multi-matte element with the roof color selection on. Open the Channels tab, hold down the Control key and select the red channel thumbnail. Back on the Layers tab, turn off the visibility of the multi-matte layer. Create a new group. While the selection is still on, create a group mask by clicking on its button and rename it Metal. Next, we're going to select and copy the raw reflection and the specular element into the metal group we've just created. Select both layers, hold down the Alt key and move them down to copy. Make sure they're inside the metal group. To control the reflectivity, we're going to reduce the opacity values. As mentioned earlier, raw render elements work best with a normal blending mode. And we're going to add a bit of specularity. Specularity works best with screen blending mode. As you can see there, just makes such a difference. Before and after specularity just makes it very realistic, even in those areas there as well. Also, we can make the roof slightly darker. To confine the selection to the roof areas only, we're going to subtract the selection by holding down the Alt key in drawing with a rectangular marquee tool. It's only those areas there. We can also use the lasso tool to subtract specific selected areas. Let's start by adding the hue and saturation adjustment layer to desaturate the selected areas. Next, we're going to add a bit of richness on wooden areas, but very subtle. So the next thing that we're going to do, select the wood, select the element first, go into the channels, hold down the control key, and select the green channels there. Create a new group with a mask and rename it wood. So just going to go to the Facade folder there and copy those two. Hold down the Alt key and move it to the Woods folder there. So we're going to create new masks, disable there and delete. Disable, delete layer mask. You can create a new one there just by clicking on the button. So we're going to start with this one first, the rich building. Select the mask thumbnail there. Enable the brush tool by clicking on its button or by pressing B on the keyboard. Switch the mask color to black and begin masking away those pixels. Just by adding one rich dirt element, it made that area of the building more solid and realistic. But obviously we have to be very subtle with these things because you want the building to look pristine. So the next render element we're going to enable is the rich dirt streaks. Again, let's select the layer mask and brush away the unwanted areas. So we're just masking out the areas that we don't want the streaks to be very prominent. So it's very subtle. That area there looks slightly flat, so we're going to add some rich dirt on that area too. So we're going to add the rich dirt to this facade as well. Because this building is existing, we don't need to be so careful about how subtle it needs to be. We can just add the rich dirt there. So for the streaks, we want that to be slightly prominent, as you can see, in the era there. Rich building, probably not so much. They just made it so realistic as a result. So we can brush out areas that we don't want. Because of the sun hitting the building, some of the wood material is lost slightly. So we can go to the wood there and bring in the diffuse filter. So next, we're going to enhance the plant material. While the plants look quite good at first glance, they could look even better if we add render elements such as specular. So what we're going to do is to select the plant there. It's in the multimat _8. Open the channels tab, hold down the control key and select the red channel. Create new folder and a group mask and rename it plant. So next we're going to select the specular render element and copy it into the group folder. Choose the screen blending mode. As you can see, just by adding the specular render element, it made the plant more interesting and realistic. And we can add a little bit of hue and saturation just to make it more realistic. See the facade and road there, just by adding a look at the shadows, how they affected underneath the car. We can apply similar techniques to other parts of the scene to make it even more realistic. The final result should look something similar to this final image here. So I've just organized it a bit further and I broke down some of the elements there. I've used exactly the same techniques as before, just desaturated a few things in there, and this was the final result. So just to finalize this, what we're going to do is to add a bit of chromatic aberration. So to do so, we're just going to select on the corner of the document there, right click, duplicate, like so, and we're going to click on that layer there to flatten it. The reason why we clicked on that particular layer to flatten it is because you wouldn't be able to have the option to flatten it if you had selected on anything but a layer, not a group. Groups don't have the option to be flattened. So once this is done, we're just going to zoom in at 100% there. Open the Channels tab and select on the red channel only. Enable the Move tool, just nudge it up, click on the green channel, nudge it down, and on the blue channel, nudge it to the left. And click back on the RGB. So now we've got the chromatic aberration there. So what we're going to do is to right click on the layer, choose to duplicate the layer, and set the destination to the main document there. So that's your chromatic aberration. So we made sure that the chromatic aberration is on top of all the main visible layers. So we're going to rename that layer as chromatic aberration. Maybe wondering why is it not on top of the multi-mat? Because these groups here, they're all empty. There's nothing in there. So now we're going to blend it. So let's use the darker color blending mode. Let's reduce the opacity value slightly. So you can just about see it there. Zoom out. The chromatic aberration effect often makes a render look more realistic, as you can see. So next we're just going to save it as a TIFF file format. Make sure that you deselect the layers and the alpha channels, because you want to flatten the image as a TIFF file. TIFF file formats are often used for high resolution prints. So make sure that that option is enabled, to discard layers and save a copy. And that's that. We can save this PSD as well. So we save the PSD. This is the reason why the group folders were named with an equal before and after each name. As you right click on a document to select a layer, you'll be able to easily see and select specific layers inside or outside each group folder. This concludes our post-production tutorial. I hope you found it useful and able to use some of these techniques in your day-to-day projects. For more free tutorials and 3D models with textures, please visit my Patreon page to become a supporter. Also, please visit my blog, Facebook page and my YouTube channel, or simply email me on jamiecardo@hotmail.com.